To my review, I guess, of the first three episodes of Raised by Wolves. A lot of people were asking me, where my sort of trailer reaction was to all of this stuff and things like that. And I'd seen the trailer over on Twitter, and then people were asking me to comment on it, and I didn't really want to be honest, because I saw the trailer and I was like, God damn, like it just looks like Alien Covenant, and it I don't know, it just looked a bit lazy, really. So I've got a lot to say about it, and it's not all negative actually. But also I don't really know. There's just so much to unpack with this show, and I also think as well, ladies and gents, that as much as I do, like, I've enjoyed the three episodes. I actually really have enjoyed it. I am almost burnt on Ridley Scott now not giving us what is set up. Like, Ridley Scott is a fantastic cinematographer. Everything looks great when he's involved, right? He is, by trade, a cinematographer. He is superb at making things just look fantastic. But unfortunately, when he has a lot of story, say, it becomes a lot of art, style over substance. It lacks anything which wraps itself up. Now, there's a lot of existential elements to Raised by Wolves, right? There's a lot of questions being asked, there's a lot of nuance that's being explored, but I can't help but think, is it actually going to be explored? Is it actually going to wrap up? Am I going to watch this? Am I going to get invested? And am I going to get, teased? Am I going to get like a cock tease, but I'm not going to be able to unload anywhere? That's basically what I'm thinking when I'm watching this show. And that's a byproduct of just being burnt on Ridley Scott over the last few years. Now, like I say, the elements of Alien from the trailer and also, the series thus far are pretty evident. In fact, quite lazily so. And I know there'll be a bunch of people that hate me for saying it, but look at this. The top is Raised by Wolves, the bottom is Prometheus. It's exactly the same location. It's exactly the same location. It's exactly the same shot. That's lazy. And as much as you all like the show, because inevitably there'll be people that are watching this that really are on board and, are going to just defend it tooth and nail. How can you defend this? That's really lazy. Yeah, it's a beautiful shot, and yeah, it was a beautiful shot in Prometheus. But we've seen it. It screams and reeks of laziness. And as well, like, I can't help but think, am I watching something that is what Ridley Scott actually wanted to make? Did he want to make this rather than Alien and Prometheus? Alien Covenant. Is this what he wanted to make? Because, goddamn, I really do think it is. And if that's the case, and if this is the direction the Alien Covenant sequel is going to go in, well, I don't really want to watch it. Like, it's not an Alien film. But anyway, I digress. So let's get back to this, right? So what is it actually about? Well, the planet Earth is apparently destroyed. Like, it's the apocalypse. War has torn the world apart between the believers of soul and atheists. Now, that's an interesting dynamic. It's a very interesting dynamic. You talk about the atheists being in charge of, science-based and focus and things like that. But then also so were the believers of soul, which I found quite surprising, quite interesting. But, it doesn't detract from the narrative. It's just something which I sort of picked up on, and, you sort of ask yourself, okay, all right then, fine. And basically the planet's destroyed. We pick up on Kepler 22b, I believe it is. That's where the atheists have sent a small vessel with two androids. Yep, Ridley Scott is still high on androids. And again, very lazily done aesthetic. The latex wetsuits, very reminiscent of the costumes that David and people were wearing in Prometheus and things like that. And it's this crossover of aesthetic that I find really just lazy, actually. You could be a lot more intelligent with it and a lot more creative, and I just think it's creative laziness, and it's a shame because, it's a good series so far, but those little comparisons, and there'll be people watching it because it's Ridley Scott, but those same people would have watched Alien Covenant, and Prometheus. And those same people will potentially be looking at this in a way that I am and going, well, that's a bit lazy. So anyway, the androids arrive on this planet and they look to seed life because they have a bunch of human embryos. There you go. That's basically it. Then obviously the believers of Soul come down, and that's as far as we've got. There's some sort of interaction there. And then we learn that the mother android being called Mother. And again, because it's Ridley Scott and because the aesthetic is so similar, and they even have white, this is what annoys me, it's even white interiors, milky interiors. And I just think, this is what you wanted to make, isn't it, Ridley Scott? You're high on androids. You've got a boner for androids. This is what you wanted to make in Alien. Anyway, because of all of the likeness with Alien, direct, like it's literally taken from Alien, these things, I think to myself, is Mother, is that what it is to you? Is that why you've used that name? And I know because both of them are called Mother and Father, and it makes sense because they are being the mother and father, but because of the comparisons and the high similarities to Alien, I can't overlook it. And again, there'll be people that definitely can. More for you. But anyway, so they raise these people, and the people of Soul come down. The believers of Soul come down. And then battle ensues, basically. That's as far as we've got to, up to episode 3. And the cinematography is amazing. There's some weird pan shots every now and then. And there's a lot of what Ridley Scott likes to do with his sort of, with his movies and things like that, is include a lot of still shots. Just scenery, just watching things develop. And I really like that. But in a show that's really slow burn anyway, it feels like padding, because this is a slow burn show. And to have just still frame shots where you're watching mist, billow over something, which doesn't actually tell us anything, and it doesn't add to the story, I really feel like it's padding itself out quite poorly. And it wouldn't be so obvious if the show wasn't such a slow burn. And I really like slow burns, but it's just a thing to note, is that it doesn't match up very well. That's a personal gripe that I had. Now, obviously, not all things are what they seem. Mother is actually a necromancer, which is like a war android, and can turn and we've seen it in the trailer. This is what I mean. I'm not talking spoilers here. It's in the trailer, and she basically can destroy people and things like that. She has special eyes, and that's what give her the powers. Whatever. Some of the changing effects are a little bit wonky here and there. Some of the flying effects are a little bit wonky. The effects aren't up to scratch to what you'd expect it to be for, one, a Ridley Scott film, and well, not film but series, and secondly, an HBO production, HBO Max original. This is something which they are headlining their subscription-based service with, so you would expect those effects to be a little bit higher. Doesn't detract too much though. They're not terrible, but it's just expectation versus reality, Now, ultimately, this is written actually by someone else. It's written by Aaron Guzikowski. Now, I can't help but think Ridley Scott has adjusted a lot of this screenplay. Because the first 2 episodes are directed by Ridley Scott, and he is executive producer, and it's his company, Scott Free Productions, which are running it as well. He has absolutely had everything to do with this. And again, it's not necessarily bad, but someone needed to reel him back from Alien Covenant aesthetic and Prometheus aesthetic and put him on a different creative path. That's my main gripe with it. Now, one of the lead actors is from Travis Fimmel. He's the chap from Vikings. He's really good in this. I really like him. He's a good actor anyway, and I like him in this role. He seems to be playing something, a character with a little bit more depth than he has in Vikings, so I like it. It's really, really decent. The guy who plays Father, I'm going to try and say this name, is Abu Bakar Salim, is amazing. I really, really like him. If he was in an Alien movie as an android, yes, like all day, every day. he brings a lot of nuance to that character of father. Very subtle, very sincere and toned down, yet hyper emotive where necessary, but also creepily so, because of course he's an android and he's forcing these things. Really like it, actually. He's a great actor. I'd love to see him in more things. And then you have Amanda Collin as mother, who basically looks like Catherine Waterston. I don't understand what the... Again, because the aesthetic is so like Alien, I can't help but think Ridley Scott has some kind of fetish for androgynous-based women recently. Catherine Waterston, short hair, very, athletic build, very lanky build. Noomi Rapace, again, much the same. And we have it here. It's exactly the same kind of thing. And it wouldn't be so on the nose if the other aesthetics weren't there and there was a little bit of nuance between the performances and things like that. But they're basically, it's just, it's there and it's you can't help but notice it. Anyway, she's still a good actress. I do think she hams it up a little bit here and there, but all in all, really good. I really didn't like the wolf cry that was going on, because basically when one of them dies, one of the kids dies, shock horror, it's really not a big deal. One of them dies, and she quite literally howls into the night sky, but she's not degrading at that point, because part of the show's narrative is that she's degrading and basically goes a little bit doolally. So I'm thinking to myself, well, why? Why are you doing that? It's not in your programming. Why is that in your programming to do that? Didn't make any sense. Thought that was weird. Campion, which is played by Winter McGrath, fine. I'm going a bit blurry. Fine. I do find kid actors to either be make or break. He's fine. He's neither annoying nor good. Hopefully, sort of, he'll pick up as the shows develop and, the series unfolds a little bit more. But all in all, look, I really liked it. I like the fact that there's a struggle in Mother between what the kids are framing her as, a villain, nasty, she didn't know she was this thing, she didn't know she was a necromancer, because she didn't know, she just found out, and her parenting programming, right, because she's been reprogrammed. I like that internal struggle, and I like the sort of existential questioning there. Are you above your programming? Yes, thank you for putting trust in me, because there's this but this sort of battle between mother and father, between trust and usefulness and things like this. And I'm going to look forward to seeing where that goes and where that develops. But, I like that. I thought that was good. I like that question there. I also like the potential to explore religion in this sort of futuristic narrative. It was really interesting, again, quite on the nose actually. The people of Sol, the believers of Sol, were basically dressed like Knights Templar. It was quite funny, the Templar Knights. But whatever, again, you kind of think to yourself, would they be dressed like that in the future? Why are the helmets like this? But it was somewhat original. I didn't hate it, I didn't dislike it, or particularly like it either way. The atheists were interesting. They indoctrinate children, well, they conscript children early on. I like the potential to explore religion versus atheism and the byproduct moving forwards. I like that. I think it has a lot of potential. My main problem is, why I'm so apprehensive, is it's Ridley Scott. And we've been burned a lot on Ridley Scott. A lot. And he sets up such beautiful narratives. But goddamn, he hasn't delivered for a long time. So we'll see. We will see. Now, the first 2 episodes were directed by Ridley Scott. I believe the third was directed by Luke Scott. I don't know who else is going to be directing moving forward. Cinematography is not actually by Ridley Scott, FYI. But again, you better believe he was there and he was doing stuff. And this is the point. When I always say, Ridley Scott's cinematographer, not, director and all this kind of stuff. People always say, well, he wasn't actually the cinematographer. So, yeah, I know that. But he has say. The director still has say over cinematographer, and you better believe, like I say, the thing is, unless the cinematographer had his nose so far up Ridley Scott's arse that he was just like, Ridley Scott did this. Welcome to my review of episodes 6 and 7 of Raised by Wolves. Now, we will talk like spoilers, just generally speaking. We sort of discuss a bit of the spoilers throughout here. My dog's jumped into frame. Hey, bud. So what we're going to be doing... Episode 6 and 7 really took a turn, actually. And it's interesting. Some of the mysteries are starting to, unfold. But then also, in conjunction with that, they've just announced it's coming back for a second season. And apparently the writer, who isn't Ridley Scott has nothing to do with the story of this at all, that they came out and said that there was enough for about 5 seasons of this. So if they've already renewed it for a second season, the response is good enough, and they think that they can kind of keep it moving along those lines. The way it's developing, and the sort of the teasing of mysteries and the little slight reveals here and there, yeah, I can definitely see that they could probably eke this out for 5 seasons. I don't think that that's the best possible way of doing it, though. So what happened? Right, well, we had some very strange scenes where Mother was in the sort of the stasis pod, but not. It's like some thought process pod where you're in your simulations. And she's bonking Campion, and I'm like, okay. But it's stated outright that he's a virus, and it's infected her system. Now, I don't know whether that's actually because Mother appears to be feeling things, right? So I don't know whether that's actually her physical manifestation of emotions, her gaining emotions, which I think is an interesting way of looking at it, actually, because that's what it could be. That's what I instantly sort of thought when I saw it. I was like, is this the physical manifestation, obviously, mental but physical inside the simulation, of her coming to terms with the fact that she's got emotions? As an android, she would naturally call that a virus, an infection in her system, and it would be a form of a corruption. So I did find that to be really, really interesting. Now, there's a few other bits and bobs which happened in this. Baby Campion, actor's starting to irritate me a little bit now. He doesn't really do an awful lot. He sort of just pisses and moans around, and punches Paul, and because Paul makes a trap to kill the sort of humanoid aliens that are on the planet. And obviously the Mithraic, the people of Sol, although I'm going to talk about the Mithraic and the people of Sol, but basically the believers come and capture Paul, they release him, and then they take down Mother in the sort of the following episode, and she's captured, and so Father is reprogrammed, but then his finger is apparently, he's still got sentience in his finger, which is quite funny because he keeps doing little things with his finger. His reprogram didn't count to his finger, strangely enough. He keeps tapping stuff, and then he knocked a glass of water over, and then obviously his little finger gripped Mother as Thimmel's character, I keep forgetting his name, Marcus I think it is, went to throw Mother down one of the holes. So that's all sort of developed, right? That's basically the bare bones of what's actually happened, right? Mithraic, the people of Sol, came over, got Paul, got Mother in, and then that was it. In the interim of that as the narrative that had occurred, there was the fact that Marcus twigged that obviously Mother was going to the stasis pod, Father thought that something was going on, and there's the deception between the two of them. And then outside of that, there's this sort of fantastical element of Baby Campion seeing the sort of apparition of one of the dead children, and he comes to an interesting realization and says that, how come I can see you but not the others? Is it because you fell down the hole? Interesting, right? Isn't that interesting? Now, could it be that Kepler 22b, okay, I'm going to go out some weird far-stretched theories here. Maybe it's some kind of technological installation. I'm going to go way out on some existential theories here. I think it's probably all some bizarre simulation, or there's some technological aspect involved here, because it's too fantastical now. It's too fantastical. So there's weird apparitions. There's drawings appearing on walls. There's people like the apparition of the child tells Baby Campion to go and kill himself. what? Like, what purpose is this serving? What is it? Like, what are these things? And this is what I'm concerned about, is that there's all these weird mysteries and nothing's really unfolding that much. The only thing that unfolded a little bit more was that big sort of structure that was in the desert that the Mithraic people initially found, right, is actually a direct representation of what they've been swinging around with their incense burners. Did you notice that? I only just twigged that, and I don't think, because they made a concerted effort to actually hone in on their incense burners in these last 2 episodes, and I just went, it's the same thing. Now, there's a few things that I think is potentially going on, because they keep saying, oh, you Mithraic technology, Mithraic power, right? And these are the people of Sol. They're not necessarily... I still think there's something going on with potentially the Mithraic are actually a different race of beings. And Kepler 22b is where some of them went. Do you see what I mean? Because the people of Sol just have guns. They don't have anything like the Necromancer as a weapon. And yes, they've been outlawed. And yes, I know that they've said some comments which lead you to believe that they built them and things like that. But they also keep claiming that it's Mithraic technology. And they need to go and find the mythical city, the Mithraic mythical city. And it's like, well, are they building it or are they finding it? You know? I can't... If humans are so technologically advanced in this world, why would they still believe in religion? And I know that's a very strange thing to say because, of course, we are so technologically advanced and we still believe in religion. But it just strikes me as a little bit odd that there's these weird things that keep propping up. So, like the structure that's there that looks identical to their bloody incense burners. All these things. Odd. Now, Father's death, that was tragic, wasn't it? Ah, oh, goddamn. What a great actor he is. He's really, 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 really good. Yeah, I really like him. The thing is about the story of this, there's a lot going on, but there's only a very slow-moving, overarching narrative. Now, it closed with Mother just sort of walking off into the distance for some unknown reason. Okay, then. So she's just buggered off now, is she? She's going to go and recoup and make weapons and then come back, is she? I guess. It closed with Marcus saying that he was the orphan child. He was the chosen one. He was the prophet. And I found that to be quite interesting because the planet is speaking to him in some way, shape or form. And that's why I keep thinking that maybe the planet is... There's some form of technological aspect there. There has to be. Marcus saw his body double, his original self, and had a fight, and then he ended up cutting himself open. So I just think of all these things and I'm like, it must be some form of a simulation of some sort. Has to be. I'm probably way off though. But the thing about the direction of the show and things like that, it's all it's all fine. Like, it all looks great. There's sometimes some wonky effects here and there. Some of the dialogue is really bad now. Marcus came out after speaking to Mother and like, was exposition city. Like, oh, I'm going to end that bitch. It's like, who are you talking to, mate? Who are you talking to? We got that by the fact that you stumbled out of the silo, you know? We get the anger, mate. We get it. We don't need the exposition as well. There's a lot of silly little things which are put there for, you know, far stupider people, it seems, which is not... Don't cater to them. This clearly, I mean, whatever. Anyway, what did you think? And where do you think it's going? What do you think and where do you think it's going? That's my questions for you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm still enjoying it. It's more of a weird, winding spectacle than anything else. I definitely think... I do. I think the Mithraic people are not necessarily the people of Sol. I think so, anyway. And I do enjoy, ladies and gents, I do enjoy the fact that they flip-flop between religion being good and bad and atheism being good and bad and the dynamic between it all. I really enjoy all of that. Yeah. But there's a lot going on that they really need to explain. They really need to get some explanations out there. 100%, sorry. Because if they don't, we're going to end up with well, it would be like Stranger Things, you know, where Stranger Things just has all these things, never bothers explaining anything, and then when they eventually do, you realise that they never actually had a plan, and it's very lackluster. Channel, episodes review of 8 and 9 of Raised by Wolves coming at you. Look, I believe I said it in my last review last week, or this week, last week. That I genuinely couldn't see how the necromancers were created by the humans of, you know, Mithras, the Mithraeans, basically those humans, right? The religious cult. I couldn't see it, and lo and behold, what gets revealed? Turns out that the humans, yes, they did create them, but they actually don't know how they created them. They created the necromancers because they were given some scriptures, and it was literally hidden in the scriptures. So they were created by aliens. I said this. I bloody said it. It just didn't make any sense to me. I was watching it, and I was like, why would they have them? Why would they have them? Why wouldn't they have other weapons? Like, none of it made any sense. None of it made any sense at all. Now, it could still turn out that they that they did create them, and that was a lie, because the robot said that, well, you know, I'm just repeating what I was programmed to repeat, but that's what I know. So basically, what happens in the few episodes, right? 8 and 9. We pick up with Mother. She goes back to the Ark that she obviously had previously blown up. Good to see that the wreckage is still there. And if you didn't notice, they still have the hexagonal structure, the sort of the beehive honeycomb structure, which is obviously very pivotal to this religion, the Mithraeans, the religion and the people of Sol, because it's, again, a 3D hexagonal structure. It's what they use on the incense burners. And it's the same structure that's in the desert, the one which they bow to and go, well, this is clearly, you know, from Sol. So that hexagonal structure is very, very important to them, or at least it seems to be important to them, because they made a bloody ship out of it. I'm not sure that's the strongest structure you could make a spaceship out of, but it's interesting. It's just something I picked up, and I was like, there you go, there's another callback. So she goes back to that ship. She believes she is injured. She has suffered quite a big, you know, blows and loss and in that fight and things like that. And then she finds a robot, another synthetic, an android, that she is going to. She starts to pull all of the liquid out of. Right, just uses him as a blood bag. Now, I will say I really like the design of the robots. They do have a bit of a callback to me anyway. I really liked Alien Isolation. They do have a Working Joe type vibe, but I like the fact that they didn't make them too human, you know. The ones which just serve a purpose and are more like a tool, they really just make them look like a tool, I guess. I mean, they've got weird little squinty eyes and more utilitarian. They're less welcoming anyway. And I like that design. I think it is quite unique. So anyway, Carl is the synth. Mother drains Carl. And they start having a discussion about what's wrong with Mother. She has some tumour in her belly. And yes, you guessed it. She's pregnant. Somehow. She's pregnant. There does seem to be a higher power on the planet of some kind. But it also goes back to her creation. Because she talks about the fact that she's, you know, pregnant. It can't possibly be. Carl talks about dark photons and this, that, and the other. And then it leads to the conversation about how, you know, because she talks about how she was created. And then Carl hangs there, because he's hanging, and says, not much is known about the necromancers. How they were made was found in the scriptures, which was passed to us from, you know, from up above or whatever. Which to me just goes, yep, I was bang on, I was right. Because the necromancers, like, they can't possibly be. If you create, and, you know, for those thinking, oh yeah, but they said it in the Mithraeans said it. Doesn't matter, we've now got other information. But then also put it to you guys that if you're going to create a being that can change its structure at will to make itself impenetrable, surely you'd make armor out of that structure, wouldn't you? Of course you would. You'd wear a skin of it. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, it's just so dumb. So no, clearly they didn't make them. Which says to me that actually the Mithraians, their god, their religion, is all aliens. I reckon it's all aliens. It's all bloody aliens, isn't it? That's why they knew to go to Kepler 22b. Because again, remember, Mithraians went there. Campion sent people there. My dog's here. Hey, bud. So definitely, it's all aliens. And then we go a step further, because in the next episode, I'm backtracking a little bit on the story here, or forward tracking. But in the next episode, there are some cards which are left for Mother presumably to find. And she looks at it, she scans it, and she has a vision. And a vision is a hexagonal, object, a 3D hexagonal object. My mind eludes me of what the actual terminology is. And what's sticking out the top? A bloody alien. A bloody alien. Now, it looked a little bit like the aliens on the planet, the creature, but not. It had the same snout-like structure, but it was more of a point on the end. Whereas the aliens on the planet now actually have, it comes down to a point, but it's not a snout so much. It's not like, it's less beaky anyway. So, yeah, it's got it's aliens, isn't it? It's bloody aliens. So, I don't know what I think about that now. And I don't know what I think about the fact that somehow Mother's pregnant and what's inside. It's very compelling, but it's very much verging away from sci-fi. Because science fiction has to have grounded rules, remember? That's why sci-fi works. Yeah, it has grounded rules and things in the universe, and then, fantasy is fantasy. This is going way into fantasy now. So, to keep the baby nourished and from killing Mother, she starts feeding it blood, because it's part plasma, so it's part human, part android. Apparently. Is this going to be the saviour of Mithras? Can't be, can it? Because it's not an orphan. Who's the saviour of Mithras? What's going on here? It's all a bit. They're playing on Satan versus, sun god here. All right, and I'll explain why in a second. But she starts feeding it plasma, and then they fight. They meet up with the other people. Fimmel's character doesn't really do an awful lot in these last two episodes. He doesn't really do an awful lot at all. He gets beaten to a bloody pulp, and he swallows the eyeballs of Mother, because he's forced to by the other Mithraians. But then he starts spitting out the blood, but the synthetic white blood. So I don't really know what's going on with that either. Maybe he's going to turn into a bloody synthetic now, I guess. All rules! There's no rules! There's no rules to the universe. So it sounds like I'm talking nonsense. But I bet you all thought I was talking nonsense before when I was like, the necromancers, they're definitely made by aliens. I did have a bunch of people going, no. Well, it looks like I was right. Also, oh my god, I'm filming this about 2 hours after I've already edited and rendered and went to upload this video. So I am so sorry, because this is going to delay it. But also I look like an idiot. I got so sidetracked talking about Mother, I didn't even talk about Father coming back. Yes! Jasper loved it as well. No, honestly, in all seriousness, what a fantastically touching scene it was. So good. And I knew there was a little bit of Father still left. I knew it was Morse code. I knew that was happening. It's just so good to see, though. And I always say, when it comes to subverting expectations on shows, you absolutely have to give someone you can't subvert someone's emotional expectations. If you do that, you lose your audience. You absolutely lose your audience, because people want the emotional expectations to come to fruition. It's what keeps the audience engaged throughout the subversion of expectations. That's why Star Wars recently fell apart, because you don't get the emotional expectations that you want. And that's why, opening up with Luke just throwing the lightsaber away was like, this is just lame. What's this? What are you doing? Anyway, I digress. Really, really fantastic to see Father back. He is such a good actor. He really needs to be in more things. Him as an actor, yes please. He's epic. Like, he is really, really good. And it's really, really good to see him back and see that dynamic coming back again. So anyway, on with the review. So there's no rules to this universe anymore. But I am enjoying it, strangely enough. I am enjoying it. Now, the reason why they're playing on good versus evil and Satan versus, you know, the sort of creatures of light and things like that. So, there seems to be definitively two factions at play, right? There's a faction that is, in terms of like a higher being anyway. I think that there's maybe two factions, or just maybe one, but this is just me spitballing. Because things are said about this prophecy, this child of Mithras, right? And yet, certain interactions are happening along the way and around the fact that this you know, this grandiose creation has happened inside Mother, that seem to indicate one power may want that thing to be dead, but then they also wanted her to live. Now, I'll explain what I mean. So Paul got whispered into destroying the cards. Interesting. So Mother can't learn more about what happened, you know, about the past and those, you know, the alien in the bubble and the little hexagonal thing. That's a bit odd. You then also had the Mithraean sort of structure in the desert protect one of the children from burning his hand. Why? Very odd. But then also when Campion whispered or spoke to Mother's belly, the child, she suffered great pain and basically proclaimed that it's all dead. Odd timing. It might have just been coincidence. But it seems to me that they're aligning that there's sort of two forces at play here, I think. And then also, the rapist Mithraean did say, hey, look, you know, those cards and this is all the work of the devil, the pagans, blah, 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 all this kind of crap. So, it's all a bit out there at the moment. Beautifully well shot. Some of the effects of that lander flowing through the desert and landing again, definitely lame, super lame. Did not enjoy that. Thought that was bad. Sound design's really good on this, actually. Christopher Nolan, you need to learn. Sound design's good on this. Learn your sound mixing, because Tenet blew my ears off. But I am enjoying it nonetheless. It seems that we're going to get some explanations, hopefully. This is the thing. I've been burned by, you know, countless series that just don't explain anything. And I'm sick of it. But I am enjoying it. What do you think to my theories and my speculative review? Let me know down below. Do you think that it's aliens? It's definitely aliens. Anyway, I think this is what... Because Ridley Scott didn't write this. He just, you know, he's on board as a producer. I think this is why Ridley Scott wanted to get involved. Because it's literally aliens created us again. I reckon that's what it is. Aliens created us, and aliens are looking to create like more higher powers and higher beings. Aliens are gods. This is clearly what Ridley Scott believes. Or gods are aliens. Anyway, whatever. Let me know. The channel, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about the final episode of Raised by Wolves. So, in a non-spoiler review, because again, like, I'm just going to talk about spoilers in a minute. So, non-spoiler... I'm intrigued to see where it goes. Because it just... Christ, it just went 0 to 100 really quick. And I still don't know if I really like it or not. It's so weird now. And I got a lot of messages going, it's definitely connected to Alien. I can't stress it enough, ladies and gents. You are all far smarter than this. Like, you really... Well, you should be far smarter than this. It is not connected to Alien in any way. Any similarities or little cues or things like that. I don't know. It's all superficial. Alien is owned by Disney. This is HBO Max. Disney will never, ever, 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 ever allow it. Okay? You're all far smarter than that. So anyway, look. Non-spoiler review is... It was a bloody interesting last episode. Not a lot happened, but a lot happened. Basically, they saved a lot of it till the final, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, I guess you could say. A lot of reveals occurred. Still, like I say, 0 to 100 really quick. Really, really quick. And I don't know what I think about it. The actor for Father, I can't remember his name. It was a very long name. He's so good. Like, I can't stress that enough. Abu Bakr Salim. He is amazing. He really is. Like, I want to see him in so many more things. He is absolutely fantastic. Travis Fimmel is a bit of a letdown, actually, in this show. I don't think the writers... I think they've hired, like, a better actor than they needed for the role. So, he's a good actor, right? He's great. But the role doesn't actually give him a lot to do, I think. Yeah. I'm sure some people will hate me for that, but it's not a slight on him. He's a good actor. I just think miscast. They needed someone that wasn't quite as good, less star power, because the roles... Maybe it's going to improve, right? Maybe the role's going to get better. And, like, that's why they hired him. So I wait with bated breath. Amanda Collin, good. I still think she's a good actress for Mother. And it is getting very interesting. Anyway, that's as much as I could talk about in non-spoilers, because we've got to get into spoilers, haven't we, really? Yeah. Let's get into spoilers. This is your spoiler warning, about the 3-minute mark. Jasper's here. Anyway. So... right, so let's talk about what the supposed connections are with Alien, because that's what people have been messaging me about anyway. I had messages on Patreon. If you do want to support me further, you like what I'm doing here, because YouTube is really crap. I have a Patreon, it's linked down below, check it out. But basically what I was being messaged is about the similarities with a certain mask that looked like an engineer helmet. Now, I acknowledge it absolutely has some similarities to an engineer helmet. Yeah, of course it does. It's not an engineer helmet. Are some of the narratives appearing to be similar to Prometheus in some way, shape or form? Yeah, absolutely it does. I acknowledge all of these things, but I also acknowledge that Disney owns Alien and Time Warner, AT&T own HBO Max, and by default Raised by Wolves. Ridley Scott doesn't own Alien, and Ridley Scott doesn't actually own Raised by Wolves. He didn't write it. So the similarities you're seeing are not coincidental, because obviously the writer of Raised by Wolves had it all completed, and he obviously pitched it, and Ridley Scott liked it because he likes this stuff, because he made Prometheus. That's why it got made. So it's not coincidence, it's just because Ridley Scott likes this stuff. But yeah, I acknowledge that the engineer, the helmet, the engineer helmet and this helmet, they do look the same. And there are very similar themes. So it turns out, right, a whole lot of nothing really happens for a while. But we find out what that thing was, that sort of creature that was on the planet. It's a devolved human, apparently. But it's also not. So, essentially, this creature runs up to Mother and goes to kill her. Which indicates to me that the creature, this humanoid, obviously does know what's going on. Like, it is aware, because it hasn't gone to kill anyone yet. But obviously it knows that there's something inside Mother, which we'll get on into a minute. And it goes to kill her. So I'm thinking, right, well, very clearly it knows what's going on. Right? It's very aware. It's in tune. Because it's been lurking around. It's not tried to kill anyone yet. It knows of everyone, and it hasn't tried to kill anyone. So it goes up to go and kill Mother. She turns around and kills it. Find out that it's a humanoid, but it's alien looking, right? And again, funnily enough, it looks similar to an engineer. Lo and behold, but it's not one. It's actually quite small in size and stature. but it's carrying a Neanderthal skull. And Father breaks a piece off and chews it. And he goes, right, well, yeah, it's a Neanderthal skull, but it's not from Earth. It's actually from here. There's a secret there's a history to this planet that we are ignorant of, which was a fantastic line and delivered so expertly by that actor. He is epic. He's so good. But it turns out that the humans on the planet were devolving. They were going through a state of devolution, which is interesting. Now, I do have to acknowledge, prior to that, there is a foray, I guess, between mother and father. Father walks off in anger, says that he's going to go and delete his memory banks and all this kind of stuff, right? Because he loves mother. He's fallen in love with her. Now, this opens up a really interesting debate about whether the androids, the synthetics, I'm just going to roll over here, are basically malfunctioning because they're experiencing human emotion. They shouldn't be experiencing human emotion. They'd always indicated that they were simulating it and they weren't actually feeling it, but they are feeling emotions now. But remember, they all went through, both of them had a state of degradation. So is it that they're degrading, or is it that they are evolving? It's an interesting concept to discuss. And I think it's interesting. It's a trope that's been done to death. Synthetics or androids becoming more human than humans. It's an interesting trope. I like it. I don't think it's a bad trope at all. And I think when explored properly, it is interesting. And I think this is an interesting way to, explore it, maybe. So basically, anyway, they go and bury the body. And then from there, that's when he, has the argument with Mother and all these kind of things. And he walks off. When Mother is, walking around, the Mother then goes and essentially gives birth to a snake that can fly. A synthetic snake that can fly, that has the powers of Mother, maybe. Yeah, you heard that right. And suckles on Mother's milk. Yep, this is what I meant. It went 0 to 100 really quickly. Really quickly. But remember, she had those flashbacks to some form of ritual, right? And they find the dodecahedron. I've been corrected, ladies and gents. It's a dodecahedron. She finds the dodecahedron that was basically in her flashback, where it had that weird little alien in it with the engineered type mask. We know it's not an engineered mask. And in that mask is a humanoid, is a human skull. What looks like a human skull, but it does have some hexagons. Basically a 2D shape of a dodecahedron on it. Which is either, again, it's either going to be a synthetic marking, or, again, it's all related to these dodecahedrons. It's related to that. So it has that all over it. She then gives birth to this giant this mini snake, which then grows up to be a massive snake. She walks off to go kill herself. Father finds her, says, no, I'm sorry. Why don't you let me pilot the ship? We can crash through into the core of the planet that we're on. It would make me happy. Let me sacrifice myself for you, and also to save everyone else. It would bring me great joy. 0 to 100. Christ alive, 0 to 100. They go through the core of the planet and out the other side. They die, and then they wake back up again. That leads me to believe that the core of this planet is an entity. I believe the core of the planet is Sol, is the sun god that's been talking to everyone. I believe it is a creature, a power, an entity like Force. It would make sense. I don't see why it wouldn't be that. Again, there's too many clues to it being that. Basically, it's a giant ball of fire. Sol, they bow to a sun god. That could be a sun god. Maybe humanoids encased it in this rubble. to this is wild theory now, in this rubble to seal it. Because obviously it'd been talking to people and things like this. I don't bloody know, something along those lines anyway. I was right before on the bloody aliens thing, so I might be right on this. And anyway, they come out the other side. The ship crashes. They jump out. The snake's massive, and it flies off into the planet somewhere. That's the end of the episode. They are actually left. Mother and father are actually left in the tropical zone, so that's interesting. David Fimmel's character starts hallucinating. He's getting weird veins all over him. I think he's probably going to get some weird powers. I reckon he definitely will. And he finds an atheist. He finds a bunch of atheists, which they've been on the planet all along. How did they get on? This is where it starts to not make too much sense, and there's some plot holes here because they didn't. There's been no. But where did they come from? It annoys me. And then outside of that, we also had Paul. Paul's a little shit. He goes and shoots his imposter mother, who very clearly loves him, and is coerced even more by Soul. Finds some paintings on the walls which move, which were either from that alien creature, that humanoid, or from the planet. Who knows? But I think it was actually, if I remember rightly, if I'm looking at it, it was actually telling the story of what was about to happen. So that's kind of why. And then they're left with Campion in charge of that group. And that's how it closes. So Fimmel with the atheists. We've then got mother and father in the tropical zone. A giant alien snake flying off into nowhere. And Campion in charge of a bunch of humans. Don't know whether I like it or not. But there was some interesting points about Mother and things like that. Mother says she felt stronger being on this planet than she ever has, or being closer to the planet than she ever has before. So she's inexplicably linked to this alien entity of some form or another. So it's bloody aliens, isn't it? Absolutely. So there you go. What do you say to that? What do you actually say to that? Well, how can you review that? It all looked great. There was some dodgy effects in this episode. But it was still alright. I'm waiting with bated breath. I can't say I really love it, because I enjoy watching it, but I am left sometimes at the end of each episode going, I liked it, but I don't know if I should have. Or, I don't know if the next episode's going to let me down. And that's a problem. Because each episode there's a little bit more that's unfolding that makes me question whether it's just going to absolutely shit the bed or not.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to talk about Raised by Wolves Season 2, Episode 3. What a doozy of an episode this was. Wow. Wow. Quickly, non-spoilers, and then we'll just go straight into spoilers, because how do you talk about this show without talking about the spoilers? Because it is really, really balls to the wall. And just to kind of get into it, you have to talk about spoilers. But as non-spoilery as possible. You know how in the episode 1 and 2 review I said how they are starting off as grounded as you possibly can for a show about this sort of stuff, and then they're slowly upping the ante like they did in season 1. It would appear that I was right, and they're doing it again. But whether it's because I'm acclimatized to it because of season 1 or not, I don't know. But this one seems to be a bit better. Yeah, it's up in the ante. There's a lot of sort of narrative threads being woven here. The trust. What the issue is with the trust? Ooh, can we trust the trust, that supercomputer? I don't believe so, in any shape or form. The serpent makes another appearance. Again, I'm trying to breeze past it as non-spoiler as possible. The interaction that they weave between mother and father in this is truly the best part of the show. It really is. Looking through these androids' eyes on the world and their moralistic approach and the humanity that they bring to the world, above and beyond what the atheists have, above and beyond what the Mithraic have. It's interesting, isn't it, how the two human factions are less human than the androids. The androids always bring more humanity. And they are different in their approach. And I feel like what we saw in season 1 was the downfall of Mother. You know, succumbing to like hubris and desire and, you know, sins basically, right? And succumbing to her humanity. Now what I feel like we're sort of getting with season 2 is a little bit of that with Father. You know, this episode specifically, it pretty Father heavy. And he's such a good actor. Such a good actor. So, let's talk spoilers. Let's talk spoilers. This is bloody great. So, spoiler warning. Mother is off chasing the serpent again, number 7. Her baby, her child. And it's interesting, so, you know, she's out there walking around in the wilderness, and she comes across a trap which the atheists have set for the serpent, so she shoots it. And they come out, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, we'll just see what the trust has to say then, blah, 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 blah. Notify the trust that Mother's going off in search of the serpent and is going to kill it. And he says, accompany her. Literally just, yeah, follow her then. No specific, you know, commentary past that. Literally just, yeah, follow her. So she scales up the mountain. And there's an interesting interaction between her and the leader of those atheists. We've seen him in the episode 1 and 2. She says, why don't you get your eyes fixed? He doesn't really reply too much. And then she says, you're wearing someone else's eyes, aren't you? You have someone else's eyes. And he doesn't reply. Well, he does reply, but it's also negligible. It's interesting, isn't it, how Mother can quite literally relate to that because she doesn't have her actual eyes. But I think there's definitely some, you know, they're setting the stage for something there. And they seem to be setting the stage for her getting her eyes back as well. You can't give us the necromancer and then not have us have the necromancer again. Like, you just can't. So anyway, she finds the serpent. She offers the serpent blood. Serpent doesn't want it and goes to eat a pumpkin instead. It's a herbivore. Now, what that indicates is that it wasn't the serpent that killed the colonists. They ran away from the serpent, and then what they thought in episode 2 was that the serpent pulled the cargo container into the ocean. But it can't have been the serpent because, one, it's not interested in eating anyone. It's not aggressive, apparently. But secondly, its body can't withstand the acidic, like, sea, the ocean. So, one, there's a really big monster in the ocean, which I cannot wait to see. Because they've had something quite interesting about all of the wildlife on this planet. There is an interesting element there. The planet itself is very interesting. So I liked that. But anyway, they then go and take the serpent back to the camp, and they're just sort of interacting with it. They're going to run some tests, and that's basically it. But then it does turn out that, I think the name's Laura, the Mithraic atheist turncoat, basically knows that it's Mother's child. She's aware. Which is, okay, fine. It'll be interesting to see where they go with that. Marcus gets a new congregation. The humans, the atheists, the Mithraic that Father was going to sacrifice. They have another fight. And Father gets knocked out, basically dead again. And he's starting to go a little bit on the fritz, but not. So he's been sort of recreating this weird android synthetic robot thing in a room, hasn't he? Now he's spilled some of his fuel blood on it, and it started to grow. So he's in search of giving it more and more fuel blood. But they've also laid the foundation for him, I believe, to transfer his consciousness into it. I think so, anyway. Because there was dialogue from one of the Mithraic kids. Campion, sorry. It was actually Campion saying, yeah, you can transfer your consciousness. You're really sturdy, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, why would a father want to outlive his son? And Campion's like, well, because other people should benefit from you. You're great. Which is lovely. Like, it's touching. Again, it's that humanity side of things that we don't see from the other Mithraic and atheists. We just don't see it. So then he's in search of this blood, and he goes into a massive fight with another robot at like an atheist camp. Like an offset village of some description, where they're just not focused on paying attention to the trust. That's what it looks like anyway. And you can see him. He beats the robot, but you can see he's really taking in the applause. He's loving the applause. So there's a few things that indicates to me. One, I still think he's going to change bodies or try to. And what I think there's the potential to happen is that they will try to set the stage that he's going to transfer his consciousness, and then maybe he won't, and then there'll just be another robot there instead, or a blending of the two, an amalgamation. I don't know. I don't think they will get rid of the actor, because the actor's so good, and it's him and Lamia, you know, those two, their interaction, those two characters just make the show what it is. So I don't think they're going to get rid of it. Now, Paul and Campion obviously followed that robotic girl back to the camp. And then they go off to warn Marcus again, because the Trust informed Paul that there's going to be a like a death squad going out to kill Marcus, basically. Now, the Trust gave Paul Mouse again. Now, there's probably going to be some form of tracking device in Mouse. It's pretty apparent, I would say. And Paul is going to inadvertently lead the atheists to Marcus. That's what I think will happen. And it will be revealed, I think, it will be revealed like, oh, I said it'd be 24 hours. You literally did it for me. It was 24 hours. I'm guessing, anyway. Marcus is an interesting character. He's really been changed. I don't know what's changing him, though. Like, all the stuff on his face, like, is pulsating and moving, and it's really strange. He's more powerful than a human should be. He's managing to pull Father around and beat the living crap out of him. There's something going on with Marcus. And this signal, this weird signal. And it'll all be linked to something somewhere along the line, I'm sure. But the threads that they're weaving now, it does feel like they're going to lead to some answers, right? They're asking a lot of questions, or they're making us ask a lot of questions, but it does feel like they're going to lead to some answers. So there you go. I really liked the skeletal android thing on the bench. I thought they did a really good job with that. Like, the set pieces are great in this. Costume's great. Good effects. Really enjoyed this episode. What do you guys think, though? I'm enjoying just watching something weird, just being like, oh, this is weird. Let me get lost in its weirdness. To the channel, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my episode 4 review of Raised by Wolves Season 2. This one was titled Control. Absolutely great episode. Really good. Non-spoilers wise, because I'll give you a spoiler warning and then we'll touch on it. Yeah, I really like how this one's developing. I think, and I've said it before in every single review that I've done, but it needs to be said continuously, in fact, is that, Season 1 was definitely finding its footing in the weird. And it did go a bit balls to the wall, and it did sort of ask a lot of questions of the audience in terms of its belief and things like that. And it didn't leave a lot actually answered. It didn't reveal much. You can definitely see the framework being laid for the answers now. And that's fantastic. Like, a really great sci-fi show in modern day is hard to come by, because they seldom answer the big questions that they ask. It's all well and good for a show to ask these massive, grandiose questions, but so very few actually come up with answers. And I really do feel like this is doing that now. And that's the hint that I'm getting anyway. So, great episode. The humanity of Mother and Father are being tested to the absolute limit. And it really is. But again, Mother comes through in this episode on top as, I guess a true representation. And same as Father, right? Like, they are two sides to humanity's coin. That's the way I look at them. They are two sides to humanity's coin. And I think they both do such a fantastic job. Amanda Collin as Mother is just astoundingly good. Travis Fimmel did a great job in this episode. More so than he's done in previous ones. I think he really pushed it. And he did a great job. Abubakar Salim, who plays Father, nails it. He knocks out the park. He's one of my new favourite actors. He really is. So there you have it for now. Let's talk spoilers now, alright? Because we need to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Oh boy howdy, do we need to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So let's get into it. Right, straight away, we have seen the android that Father has created, or recreated, or brought back to life. We've seen it already. It's actually in the poster, believe it or not. It was hiding in plain sight all along. And you'll see it on the screen now, like I would have zoomed in and stuff like that. So good. That is absolutely the android. But it's interesting, isn't it, that this android almost has necromancer-like powers. Appears to fly, almost appear like a golden sunshine shimmer. You know, they're not necromancer powers, but they're similar. I mean, the fact that this android can fly, okay, that's new. That's brand new, which we see. You know, this is the android that obviously interacts with Father right at the very end, this blinding light. And it's also the blinding light that saved Campion, and then made Campion think that he had seen Soul. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether this is the android or the source of a signal, or whether this android knows anything from the past. It's obviously been long gone for some time, so I'm really intrigued to see where they go with this. Like, genuinely really intrigued. The other side of it was, of course, Mother getting her powers back. She got her eyes back out of Caleb's, Travis Fimmel's guts, which was an interesting turn of events. We knew that Paul, with Mouse, we knew that there was something going on with the Trust, whether he had put a tracking device on Mouse or we don't know, but obviously we do know now what the Trust had done, had laced Mouse with some sort of time-specific disease. And, when Mouse comes out, releases the disease, but fortunately and unfortunately, the disease only affected 2 people. It affected Paul. Paul became like this weird sort of, and it was a serpentine thing. His eyes went serpentine just before they closed up with these weird scales all over him. Basically just become a massive cocoon, this disease. And one other individual that was just cannon fodder. It didn't affect Travis Fimmel's character because he had Mother's eyes in him. But subsequently from there, obviously what happened was Campion ran off to go and get Mother. Told Mother. Mother came down and was like, look, we can help Paul. Give him to me, we can help him, we can take him to the Trust and we can fix it. And quite rightfully so, Caleb was like, no, get out of here. No, you're not doing that. I will believe that I can fix this with Soul's powers, etc. And then that's when Mother realized that the power Caleb had is not his. It was her eyes, to which she pulled out of his guts and put back in her eyes. And I tell you what a great sight it was to have her finally back in full necromancer form. And she went hard on the Trust. She destroyed the Trust. And just the power set again, it's fun to see the strength and just OP sort of power set that the necromancers have. Can you imagine creating that? It's just absolutely insane. She literally marches right up to the forces of the Trust, and the Trust, the atheists call through to the Trust, and the Trust is like, yeah, open fire. So they do, and then they're like, shit, she's got her eyes back, she's armed. Because they're just shooting her and literally nothing is happening. Instant regeneration. To which she goes mental and starts doing her screams and blowing people up. And basically just floats right over to the massive ship and goes, look, I don't want to break the ship, but I will. Open the door. To which the Trust does, opens the door, lets her in. And they have a conversation, and the conversation's quite telling, I think. It's interesting. And again, to me, it's an exploration of humanity. She says, reveal the antidote, reveal the how to heal him, and he goes, there is none. I don't know. It was calculated. It made sense to destroy them and to risk the lives rather than destroy and risk the lives of all the atheists. And she was like, how are we from the same human mind? How? And I just found that to be fascinating. But anyway, obviously Mother forced them to shut down. Basically killed the Trust, sent the atheists into haywire mode. They're like, oh my god, we've got no one to control us now, what's going on? And it is interesting, isn't it, how the atheists, despite being atheists, put their true faith in, a computer. And I guess that goes to some perspective of how humans like to have, they like their control to be removed from them, the decision making, the sort of repercussions of their actions, the consequences of their decisions. If they give it over to someone else, then they don't have to face the face the full brunt of the consequences. And that's kind of what I got from that, because they went mental after that, absolutely haywire, screaming, running, shouting all over the place. And Mother's there like, look, let me lead you. I just want to be a mother, basically. And when the time is right, I'll pass the baton over, I promise. And obviously she's talking about passing it over to Campion, which, you know, they've set that up quite a lot now. Which doesn't bode particularly well, because they're making Campion into something which potentially he's not actually meant to be. And that goes to show Mother's misplaced confidence in her own offspring. There was not much with the serpent this episode. We did see what creatures had pulled the other atheists into the ocean the other episode last week. And that was some sort of humanoid swamp monster, which is kind of cool. You can actually see it in the trailer. There's one on the side. This obviously from a future episode, so we know they'll interact with them again. And I do find the humanoids on the planet to be quite interesting. We had the humanoids on the opposite side, not the tropical zone, but what do you ever call it? The desolate zone, the desert zone, whatever. And then you got humanoids on the tropical zone side. So it is interesting. But then, of course, Father and this new android, that's going to be that's going to be really interesting to see where that goes, because you can see her actually in the trailer a few times. It's a woman. You can see her in the trailer a good few times now, and you can see her interacting with Mother and the sort of confusion and concern on Mother's face. So it'll be fascinating to see where that actually goes. What do you say about that, ladies and gents? Good. What? I've just finished watching Raised by Wolves. I'm late. I'm watching Batman and other crap. No, the Batman's great, by the way. Oh my god! What? This episode was absolute madness. I don't know quite where to start with this episode. So much happened. So much didn't happen. We had our character of Sue becoming a bloody tree at the end. The tree of life, I'm assuming. The Mithraic tree. What? Oh my... What? I'm stunned. They go absolutely balls to the wall on this. Father's little side project, the grandmother android, has sort of necromancer powers but doesn't. Not a weapon. Something else. This episode was epic. Tempest's baby arrives, and then a new sea monster comes out. Lovecraftian, envelops it, puts it in its stomach like a chest cavity, and then runs away. The interesting thing about that one is the acidic water didn't affect the baby. Burnt Tempest apart, didn't seem to affect the baby. Bit weird. Oh my god, what an episode! So let's break it down. Let's talk about it, right? So those are the key points that happen. But let's talk about all the moving pieces of this puzzle and where things are sort of going now, right? The signal obviously spoke to Sue. Well, Sue spoke to the signal, but then the signal told Sue that it wants Sue to find the hexagonal box, the artifact that allegedly contained the seed that would bring the tree into existence. Now, interesting enough, when she was trying to open that seed, when she ran off with Paul, the serpent was going nutso and was very angry. So there I am thinking that this serpent that was, created by this signal, is it going to be the same signal that's apparently persuading Sue to do these things? It obviously didn't want her to open it. It was scared, it was concerned, it was like, what are you doing? We can't do that. So the moving piece of this puzzle with the serpent is very interesting, because now I'm starting to think, well, maybe in terms of this signal, there are two signals. Maybe. I think so. Grandmother being an ancient Mithraic android, not a huge surprise. Interesting that obviously has been on the planet for so long, thousands of years, in fact, and is speaking ancient Mithraic. So it goes to show that the planet was something which, you know, everyone knew about anyway. And has also, grandmother just sort of disappeared. She's all wired up to the computers and stuff, and then vanished. So I'm wondering if her consciousness has gone somewhere. But it was interesting, wasn't it, that mother immediately ran up to her and was like, yep, nope, we're having a standoff. But they both did the same kind of similar-ish pose. But it's interesting that grandmother becomes golden in that pose. But also grandmother's well aware that she was facing a weapon. Yeah, that's a weapon right there. That is a weapon. But what's inside grandmother? There's something else, some code lurking in her that they couldn't quite decipher. What's that about? Oh, it's getting interesting. I love this show. Oh, balls to the wall, nonsense sci-fi, but it's just so good. I genuinely couldn't believe the thing with Tempest. Tempest could have gone either way. Tempest walking up to the ocean shore. They kept showing the waves. Beautiful cinematography, by the way. But they kept showing the waves, and I was thinking, is a wave just going to come and sweep her away? She's going to die? Because they kept showing it. I was like, yeah, okay, interesting. But then they showed the funnel. Now, it's interesting that the funnel was obviously going into the crust of the Earth, obviously underwater and stuff. And the sound waves were travelling. Now, we know that the tunnels on the other side were home to the other humanoids. So obviously these are exactly the same, just on the other side. But then quite an unusual looking monster came out. Not the same as the ones we've seen already. Very, very different, in fact. Much, much bigger. Much, much, much more terrifying. They had... Tempest gave birth. Obviously that was the baby's cries which summoned the animal. The humanoid. But seemed to know what it was doing. It knew what it wanted. It didn't want Tempest. It wanted the baby. And it opened up this chest cavity. This whole thing just opened up. Like a big mouth. And it just picked it up and put it in. But whilst it was doing it, it was burning Tempest's arms by pulling her off. By, you know, taking the baby off of her. But the baby didn't look like it was being burnt. So what's that all about? Oh. And then it just slunk straight off into the ocean. But do you remember... I remember season 1 actually. No, let's talk about this. Season 1. When she found out she was pregnant and Tempest, exactly the same character, was put in sort of solitary, sort of, but sort of not, in the outbuilding. Do we all remember this? And those creatures on the other side of the planet were going mental for Tempest. Do you remember? And Mother came down, unleashing the sound waves, just blowing them all up. I remember that. Isn't that interesting that they wanted the children? I'm wondering what's going on there. Ooh. Ooh. And then, of course, we close with Sue becoming a tree. Marcus eating a bit of fruit, which looked oddly flesh-like. But then the veins flowing and the heartbeat. And you could tell he knew what Sue had become. Oh, this show's great. It's almost like Sue and Marcus have become Adam and Eve, and then Marcus has consumed the forbidden fruit. Ever thought about that? Oh. Anyway, more of a conversation piece than a review. Ladies and gentlemen, Raised by Wolves Season 2 finale. This was episode 8. This is going to be my review, thoughts, theories, discussion, all spoilers, of course. Wow. Where do you go from here? Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think first and foremost, probably best to address just how balls to the wall it was. but also how disappointed I am that there's only 8 episodes this season. And there may have been 8 episodes last season. It doesn't feel like it's been going long enough. 2 months, 8 weeks, 8 episodes. Very disappointing, I'm not going to lie. I want more of this, and there's a testament to how the universe and world has been drawing me in. Season 1, I wasn't entirely convinced. Season 2, yeah, I'm all in. I'm balls deep, as it were. I'm all in. I absolutely adore this show. It's the best sci-fi show on TV, categorically, and has been actually for quite some time if you look at the offerings of sci-fi. So what happened in this episode? Well, Mother gets the veil transplanted, and the big twist and turn is, of course, that Grandmother is not what she appears. Not what she appears at all. In fact, yes, she did trick Mother. And in fact, yes, somehow, some way, Grandmother is the reason why all of the other humans have devolved on the planet. Grandmother is the very reason that by the end of the episode, all the children, all the humans are going to be devolving and going into the ocean. It's her plan. It's a way that she can ensure their survival, because once they've devolved, apparently the entity will go to sleep. Now, I think props to Grandmother, the actress behind Grandmother. She did a stand-up job. Really, really good, in fact. From the moment they removed the veil, I think whoever cast this actress did a really good job. Very striking eyes. I mean, she may be wearing contact lenses, I don't know. But overall, the facial features are very striking. And if you look at each actor that portrays an android, they chose very, very well. And the reason why I'm saying Grandmother was chosen really well is because it's in keeping with the others as well. Very striking appearance. When she smiles, quite an open face, warm, welcoming. But the moment the smile goes away, there's a sense of dread and foreboding. It takes a lot to emote that much. So I think, yeah, props to whoever cast this individual, because they did really, really well. Now, obviously, that's quite a big twist and turn for this episode. The fact that Grandmother is indeed evil. Planned it all along. Now, the reason why the veil was removed is because the veil can then subdue Mother's powers as well. Not only her emotions, but it will subdue her powers, which is what happens by the end of the episode. Mother chooses to put the veil on, as was agreed. She goes off, she murders the serpent. Kills the serpent. Campion gets annoyed with her, obviously, thus, revealing to Lamia, Mother, that he does indeed know that the serpent was her child. Then after, post-serpent's death, Father comes up to her and says, "Are you going to take it off?" "No, I'm not. I'm going to leave it on, because the cascade of emotions will be too much to deal with, and I'm best served with the veil on for now." Now, the veil, by the end of the episode, begins to consume, literally consume, Lamia, encasing her like a cocoon. So much so that then, by the end of the episode, Grandmother has chucked her in one of the sleeping pods and is running a simulation to keep her locked in so she doesn't communicate to anyone. That's when, Mother reveals to Grandmother that she is aware that Grandmother is devolving her children. And then, subsequently, what I said previously is then revealed to Lamia. Fascinating turn of events. Genuinely, really, really fascinating. Now, the method by which Grandmother is doing this seems to be a game. Like a hollow game. Somehow devolving the humans. I don't know how. Not overly sure. But it seems to be via a game. The religious undertones are there again, of course. Because Grandmother gives these hollow games to the trade atheist, the atheist that keeps trading for goods between all the humans, and in doing so, the previous trader to that woman had given in trade for a coat Lamia the god, Lamia the serpent killer. And it's fascinating, isn't it, how you can create gods of anything. I thought that was quite interesting. And the grandmother obviously gives us a pretty damning speech that, you know, even atheists will create something to worship, but those prayers will go unanswered, which is obviously quite a foreboding statement. Father is none the wiser. Campion, everyone else is none the wiser. The two other major events that happened here is that the baby, Tempest's baby, was actually being changed by the milk of that sea creature, the sea beast, the evolved human, which I thought was quite interesting. Bit of a surprise that they went that route. I didn't think that they would. In fact, I did a stream last night where someone commented that, and I did say I don't think that would work in the logic of the universe, but they're just throwing it out there anyway, so whatever. I didn't like that, I'm not going to lie. That was my only major downside to this whole episode. I just don't think there's a mechanism by which that works, even in universe, personally. And I know you could say, well, people get turned into trees. Yeah, nanobots and stuff. Unless there's nanobots in the milk. I don't know, I don't see it. But never mind. Outside of that, Marcus is still trying to get to the entity for some bizarre reason, even though it's no longer speaking to him. I don't know why, but yes, he is indeed trying to go and get to the entity. Maybe he's trying to kill it because of Sue obviously being turned into a giant tree. Now, when the serpent died, the tree came back out of it. Paul reveals to Marcus he believes the tree is a way to bypass the fact that the entity can't signal this side of the planet. Apparently that connects into the ground and can magnify the entity's signal so it can communicate. Anyway, Marcus is strung up, upside down against the tree by one of the Mithraic that was promised to kill him. And by the end of the episode, Marcus isn't dead. He's floating upside down in the sky, dropping blood all over the Mithraic. Interesting turn of events. Not overly sure why, not overly sure what that means for Marcus moving forwards. Has he got powers? Has he not? Why is he floating? Because he seemed to be dead momentarily before that. A bit confused. Oh my god, what a weird episode. But that's it, that's the end of Season 2. What does this all mean? Well, I've no idea. Your guess is as good as mine. What's my thoughts and theories on this, though? Well, Lamia's now back in a simulation. The simulation was what allowed her to come into contact with the entity previously. It's what allowed the entity to impregnate her somehow. But she's back in one now. She wasn't going to go into a simulation before that. But the entity now can communicate on this side of the planet. So, it's my belief that in Season 3, Lamia will come into contact with the entity again. That's where some of the explanations will occur. Probably, I would imagine so. Now, Grandmother did say something interesting, was that we shouldn't eat the creatures because bad things happen or something along those lines. But they've already eaten the creatures. But that would make sense as to why the baby is getting mutations. Maybe it's not from the milk. Maybe it's from Tempest consuming one of the creatures. Who knows? Not overly sure on that. A bit confusing. Now, Grandmother is a bit of a wild card here. She was built by the technocrats. Technically atheists, I guess, to a certain degree. But it was the Mithraic that built the necromancers in the war. Now, whether the technocrats are a more obsolete version of the Mithraic, maybe. It's a bit of a difficult one to sort of, deal with and sort of theorize here. Whether the technocrats, through thousands of years, developed into the Mithraic, maybe they believed their own BS. Technocrats doesn't really sound like religious zealots, does it? It sounds like people that believe in technology over anything else. But maybe. But then who's the entity? Because the entity seems to be more technologically based than anything else. But the entity is in the center of the planet, by the looks of it. Or at the very least underground, for the most part. So that'll be interesting to see where that goes. The serpent now dead. The tree came back out. The serpent. What does that mean? I'm assuming just that the serpent is legitimately now just dead. Lamia ripped out its brain and said, what a shame. It was obviously quite intelligent. Which is quite a shame, actually. And it was quite sad. The serpent went to suck, milk out of Lamia again. But couldn't, because obviously Lamia had her teats all blocked up. So it is a shame, really. Because what would have happened if that could have occurred? Maybe Lamia being a correct mother to the serpent, it may not have been weaponized by the entity. It's a difficult one. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Bit of a sad and somber day for me and all of you sort of sci-fi fans out there, I guess. A really good series has bitten the dust. Currently. So this is Raised by Wolves. It's dead. At HBO or HBO Max. It's gone. Now, this will undoubtedly be a decision from David Zaslav, the chap who's come in from Discovery. I'm really quite disgruntled by this. I grew to enjoy this show quite a lot. And it's one of those bittersweet elements because, I understand why they're doing it. These sort of high concept sci-fis are really expensive. But there's so few around. And I enjoy a good high concept sci-fi. I really, really like them. But now the story is going to be left unfinished. Now, I'm no major Ridley Scott fan. I've made no qualms about hiding that. But even I think he should finish his Alien trilogy just because the story is left untold. We have a story that's unfinished. And this is now going to be the same with Raised by Wolves, which isn't Ridley Scott, just as an FYI. He's just an executive producer. It's actually made by someone else entirely. And obviously people see similarities between Raised by Wolves and Ridley Scott's other work. But you need to remember is if he's an executive producer, he's just going to jump on board for things that he has an affinity to. So similarities are not too far of a stretch. But this is really, really just a massive bloody shame. I'm really disappointed. So Raised by Wolves has been cancelled at HBO Max. Oh, fucking this has pissed me off. Like, it really has. Yeah, I just stop killing off good high concept sci-fis. And they must have spent so much money on this as well, and I just think, oh no. So HBO Max has cancelled its sci-fi series Raised by Wolves after 2 seasons. At least it's not, in the same grounds as what Netflix does for some of their productions. Anyway, just like, a few episodes dead, 1 series dead. At least we've got 2 seasons. But this is why so few people engage with series in Netflix anymore. And just series in general on streaming, because they're not reliable to state. They get killed. They get killed off. Ugh. I'm really bummed out by this. But they shoot themselves in the foot because as a streamer producing this sort of supposedly high quality content, things don't get off the ground because people choose to disengage with it. And this is evidence of that, right? This is not necessarily the reason. Yeah, this isn't the reason why this is cancelled or anything like that. But this is evident of the problem we have with streaming services just cancelling products. And think of The Expanse, right? The Expanse was one of those ones which was cancelled, got picked up elsewhere, and is a cult classic. It's fantastic. So anyway, the news comes 2 months after the series, which counts Ridley Scott among its executive producers, concluded its 2nd season on the streamer. HBO Max said following the show's September 2020 debut that it was the top performing original series at the service at the time. So why'd you cancel it? Oh wait, probably because you were lying. So per usual, no concrete numbers were released because they don't have to, and they can't be independently verified. There's no way to independently verify them. So Aaron Guzikowski created Raised by Wolves, and Scott helmed the first 2 episodes, and then subsequently, other individuals jumped on board, as well as Ridley Scott's son. His first episodic TV credit
as a director in the United States. Ridley Scott's. So, we have this. This is from HBO Max. While we are not proceeding with the third season of Raised by Wolves, we are beyond grateful to the stellar cast and crew, our creators Aaron Guzikowski, Ridley Scott, David W. Zucker, and the entire team at Scott Free Productions for their beautiful artistry and unique ability to immerse fans into the world of Kepler 22b. This is just platitudes. Give me my series. I tell you what annoys me about this. What grinds my gears about this in particular, ladies and gents, is the fact that a sci-fi series like Raised by Wolves won't get its third season. But then a piece of absolute garbage trash, Batwoman, gets like 3 or 4 seasons. Not happy about that. Not happy about that at all. Stop cancelling the good stuff. So the cancellation also comes shortly after the merger of Warner Media and Discovery. So it would be David Zaslav. Which obviously there'll be a financial reason behind it. I understand that. Like, I get it. I do get it. I get it a lot. But it's still a pain in the arse. So scripted development at the so-called T-Nets has dwindled significantly in recent years, with some shows originally slated for the cable outlets, including Raised by Wolves, ending up on streaming. So producer J.J. Abrams, and this is the other thing, right? J.J. Abrams has had like a $250 million overall deal with Warner Brothers and HBO Max. Where's his products? At least that Raised by Wolves was actually making it, and they get nerfed. So Raised by Wolves cast member Abubakar Salim raised the possibility of the show's demise in a series of tweets Friday, writing in part that it's not surprising, especially after the news of the mergers and what is happening at Warner, that a lot of shows are not having their stories finished. And unfortunately, one of those shows is Raised by Wolves. Salim then appealed to the fans of the series to advocate for it finding a home on another platform. And you know what? This is one of those ones which could live on another platform. And Abubakar Salim, who plays Father, is such a good actor. Like, I want to watch everything he's in now. He is epic. He's a fantastic actor. So Guzikowski executive produces Raised by Wolves with Scott, David Zucker, Jordan Sheehan, Adam Cole-Brenner, and Mark Huffam. And it's no more. The other good thing about this, at least potentially, is that this series may live on in like graphic novel format, because there were like a few comics of this released as well. So there is the potential that it could live on there. It's dependent what the rights deals are with respect to this, whether HBO Max was just the distributor, whether they will relinquish the rights now that they're not choosing to sort of option it for a third season. And if it's Scott Free Productions doing the actual studio producing side of it, like the actual making of the thing, the production side, then it still could quite happily live on, but who knows. It's big old bumholes though, really, really frustrating. Yeah, I'm using words, calmer words, because I am actually genuinely annoyed by this. This is a series that I really liked. Lame. So let's hope this continues on. If there is any movement on this with respect to petitions, don't really mean anything, but if there's a petition, let me know over on Twitter at MissHReviews, because I would genuinely share it. This is one of those ones which I would love to get picked up. So let me know what you think. Are you dismayed? Where did you think the story was going to go? Because they left on a massive cliffhanger.